courses. He has also worked as a faculty at the AV Baliga College of Arts and Science at Kumta, and he holds a PhD in forest ecology and vegetational change. He has explored the convergence of ecological science with cultural and spiritual practices, emphasizing the role of traditional knowledge as well as people in sustaining the ecosystem and environment. So he has contributed to many environmental impact assessment and various environmental education programs. He is also a recipient of Karnataka State Rajyotsava Award in 2013 for his contribution in the field of environment and agriculture. So he is a source of inspiration for young researcher like me, and the kind of energy he carries in the field, it is really outstanding. So with this, today's discussion on the occasion of International Day of Forest, with the theme for this current year is forests and food. We aim to extend our understanding of forest ecosystem, their significance to local communities, and how we can collectively work towards the preservation of our natural heritage for sustaining a better future. So I encourage all the participants to actively engage by posting and asking the question in the comment box or chat box to enrich this session. So we welcome you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Sir, please unmute yourself first. Click on allow.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hello.
You are audible, sir. You can start.
Okay. Yeah. So, good evening, all the faculty members, research scholars, all the guests who have come to hear this talk today evening. And the topic is restoring lost homes for the spirits of the forests. So, maybe wondering whether it is a topic on science or something related to spiritualism, like that. So, anyway, I may not be giving a very spirited talk. The thing is, what are the spirits of the forest? Are they deities, or are they only what you call the Atma? So spirit is variously understood. But whatever we hear, we don't have any controversy, because we also, spirit is there in aspiring, spirit is there in inspiring. So whether spirit is material or non-material is also not the any point of argument for today. So we will just get into the topic and go ahead. Restoring the lost homes. Now, the Rigveda states of forest spirits, especially Aranyani in the Rigveda, the mother of all sylvan things, who tills not, but has stores of food for all. So, but today, we hardly hear of Aranyani, the spirit of the forest, which is there in the Rigveda. So, but it is time that we awaken this spirit Aranyani, or this goddess Aranyani, and seek the blessings very badly. Now, before the Christian era, almost all countries and cultures had their own religions, and those religions were not all dogmatic religions, they were local religions. Now, and there were many, many deities, and most deities were linked to nature. Now, for example, if you see the Greek mythology, we find the tree spirits. Yeah. The dryads, which figure much in the poetry of Victorian period, the dryads. And they are the tree spirits of Greek mythology. There are several tree spirits. It is not needed to talk about all. Now, in Ireland, Pukka is a shape-shifting trickster spirit. These spirits may be benevolent spirits, they may be harmful, they may be combination of both. Now, this one is Pan, Pan-Indian, Pan-Asian. Pan means all over, widespread, omnipresent, like that. So, Pan was also a very important pre-Christian deity of Greek mythology, and Germany had Valdes. They are again spirits of the forest or deities of the forest in the pre-Christian period. And Australia, Mumus, ever changing their shapes. They may be good or they may have their bad sides also. And in Congo, Iroko spirits, they are considered dangerous too. Now, Japan has what you call Kodama tree spirits. They are spirits of the woods. So, the worship of various kinds of spirits or local deities were characteristic of the organized religions, especially from the beginning of Christianity. And for example, the Australian tribes, these tribes have been living in Australia for almost 60 to 65,000 years. They had their own resource use systems, they had their own agriculture, their own hunting, gathering, then their own restraints on resource use, their own unwritten laws were there. So the Aboriginal people of Australia considered the land as a part, or as a spiritual part. Land was spiritualized, and you cannot separate one from the other, one element of land from the other. The animals, plants, the mountains, streams, all form a harmonized systems. Now, bushfire in Australia was filmed in 1936, and that black and white was made into color. Now you see, 1936, the forest appeared to be burnt here. You can see the forest appeared to be burnt. Aboriginal people systematically burnt vegetation. Why did they burn vegetation? That was to reduce the fuel load. So if the forest, extensive forests in Australia, if the forests are not burnt in parts, what happens? The dead material keep on piling up enormously, and then even lightning, dry lightning, or even any kind of fire can devastate, create holocaust, and burn forests in thousands of square kilometers in a short time. So to reduce fuel load and to encourage new growth, the new growth in the forest brings animals. So grazing animals keep coming, and these animals, the tribes used for hunting, for as a food source, and then the tubers come up in the forest, various seeds, fruit plants, all regenerate. So the burning was a part of regenerating the forest. So it was practiced through millennia. The entire Australia was like a single estate before the European arrival, and but managed by hundreds of local communities as just one estate. Now, when Europeans came, they saw this kind of fire. They were scared of the forest fires. So they brought the fear of fire. They quickly prohibited in Australia the practice of traditional burning. The traditional burning actually cleared the understory vegetation. So once burning was stopped, the understory vegetation started growing in an unchecked fashion. And hot, dry winds, severe thunderstorms, lightning strikes, dry lightning particularly, create forest fires. And recently, in the 2020s only, Australia witnessed the most devastating forest fires in the history, and which killed an estimated 143 million mammals, 2.46 billion reptiles, 181 million birds, 51 million frogs. See, their habitats were destroyed very badly by uncontrollable fires. So the forest management system brought in by the Europeans and fitted in unknown countries and continents can have many times catastrophic impacts. Now, so how the spirit is different from the God? What Bible says, John 4.24, God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth. So on the one hand, God is spirit. On the other hand, God has a spirit. So it's a little ambiguous. In the Indian context, if we consider the local traditions, the folk traditions, we find what we call spirit for one community may be God for the others. And what we call God for one community may be spirit for others. So there is not much demarcating line between spirit and God. So in the North Malabar area, you are familiar with the Theyyam. Theyyam looks like the Kathakali in the headgear and makeup, but this is what is called, it is a kind of a possession by a deity. It is a more a religious performance and not a performance of art. So here the local deities, the deities of the sacred woods, specially preserved sacred forests, possess some people only, who are the original occupants of that area, original occupants, early occupants. When that time the forests were dense and vast, and resources were plenty, especially in terms of non-timber forests. Produce agriculture was limited, but later came the landlordism, other communities, and these forest clearances took place in a very big way, but small forests were retained as what is called kavus. The kavus means sacred groves in Malayalam, kavus. So the spirits of the kavus are Theyyams. There may be idols of the deities there, and once in a year, these people who get a possession from the deity, they are brought from the hills and forests beyond and brought, and they are treated well, and in the holy fire is lit, some pujas are performed, and then the deity possess these performers, and then that night they are the local gods. So they embody the gods. So for the people who are the worshippers, these theyyams in possession, they are embodiments of gods. So theyyam itself means the spelling Theyyam, YYAM. Theyyam is Devam. Devam. Even in Greek, theyyam is theology is discussion on gods. Theophrastus is a Greek philosopher. Now, in the United States, before the arrival of the European colonizers, there were hundreds of tribal people living, not only in US, but in Canada, in South America, in Central America. There were hundreds of indigenous communities, and they had practiced the burning of forests periodically, not entire forests, but forests were burnt in patches because these communities were part of the landscapes. So they could not burn down their homes. See, there were water bodies, hunting forests, then fruit collection forests, oak seed collection forests for starch. So the landscape was managed. The trees were pruned, and there were God's forests which were not tampered with. They were kept in pristine condition, and these all forests stored enormous quantities of carbon in their biomass, and periodically they burnt little forest so that the forests were kept in low fuel level. So low fuel level means there cannot be holocaust, fire holocaust, as we witness in Californian forests these years, and Los Angeles city has been totally washed out, destroyed. It is a fire holocaust because the colonists, the Europeans, did not understand the fire cycles in the forest, and the fire management by indigenous people were not given any kind of merit. And these indigenous people were sent out of vast stretches of forest into what is called reservation areas. So they were sent out, and in later period, many of these forests inhabited by local people were converted into national parks. And in the national parks created by Europeans all over America, from Canada down to South America, there used to be vast stretches of forest and not any human being in that. So forests and forests like that, maybe natural grasslands, water bodies, all that. Now, for indigenous people, landscape managed by them produced abundance of food, including animals which could be hunted, fish plenty in the streams and other water bodies, and controlled use of fire reduced even pest problems also. Now, for the many Native Americans, the redwoods, the Californian redwoods, the trees which I have seen, even the Egyptian civilization, over 3,000 years old trees are found there. And today we come to know these very old groves were the sacred forests of the indigenous people, which they had preserved without burning. And even if these forests were burnt, they had the fire buds, fire tolerant buds. After the fire, they germinate also. So those indigenous people lived as part of this Californian forest, redwoods. And see, this system was completely upset where the indigenous people were sent out of their traditional homes and put into reservations elsewhere. So that when fires break out, as in Los Angeles, whether in the city or in the mountains beyond, they go uncontrollable, and the toxic air and the carbon releases are of inestimable quantity. So now this kind of risk from forest fire repeatedly happening made the United Nations think and come with the new programs called agroforestry, how agriculture and forestry can be combined together. Trees have role in farms. This term was coined in 1970s by John Bennett, agroforestry. A variety of products are expected from agroforestry: food, fruits, nuts, edible leaves, tubers, roots, honey, herbal medicines, spices, etc., etc. Apart from soil regeneration, water conservation, carbon sequestration, pollination services, etc. Now, International Council for Research in Agroforestry, uh, in its publication on agroforestry, start with a quotation. That quotation, interestingly, is from Rigveda, not the Rigveda, Atharva Veda. Whatever I dig from the earth, may,
हाँ
hello,
परिचय होने लगता
hello, hello.
You can continue, sir. That was someone's mic was on.
Oh, okay. So, may that have quick growth again, O purifier, may we not injure thy vitals or thy heart. This is in the Atharva Veda. So, the agronomist, pepper researcher, Dr. KPP Nair, considers agroforestry as a new name for a set of old practices which have been already existing in India and already existing in many parts of the world. Now, if we come to the Western Ghat, West Coast area, in 1801, immediately after the defeat of Tipu Sultan in Mysore War, 1799, he was defeated, and the entire Kandra, Mysore, then South Karnataka came under the dominance of British. So, General Wellesley, Wellington, sent one emissary, one scholar, Francis Buchanan, to travel through all the newly acquired territory of the British Empire and to write about the forests, people, rivers, animals, stones, everything. So Buchanan wrote volumes of this material, and when he came through North Kannada district, Uttara Kannada, he recorded what the forests are the properties of the villages in which they are situated. Not to mention forest department. The forests are the properties of the villages in which they are situated. The trees ought not to be cut without having leave from the Gauda. Leave from the Gauda means permission from the headman of the village, who is also the priest to the temple of the village god. And if this ritual is not followed, that may bring the wrath of the god, the vengeance of the god. So, now there were several scores of such preserved village forests, where a tree could be cut in Francis Buchanan's days. In those days, he reported, tree can be cut if needed only with the permission of the god, which the priest has to take, that we have to cut one tree for a reason. And that was a kind of preservation of the sacred forest. Now, in the village of Matigar in Siddhapur, so with our help, the community protected one sacred grove which was thrown to disturbances from outside. And you know what this 1 hectare sacred grove has? Vateria indica. It is a endangered species according to IUCN evergreen. Syzygium travanguricum, critically endangered tree, and found more in Travancore area, but discovered in an obscure sacred grove in Siddhapur Taluk of Uttara Kannada, very far from Travancore. And we found this tree in many other sacred groves also. So because of the culture of protecting sacred groves, these trees remained. Now, what was the pre-colonial landscape like? Before the forest department took hold of all the forest lands, all the lands for which people had no legal record of rights were all made state forests. But in the pre-colonial landscape, if we historically reconstruct, we find forests were burnt to create a grassland. In heavy rainfall area, if forest is not burned, grass won't come. Within the forest, weeds may come, other herbs will be there, but there will be no fodder. So the land has to be burnt in part to create grazing lands. And then for the deities, the gods, special forests were preserved. They are called sacred groves. They were once very extensive in 50s and hundreds of hectares. But today, many of them are gone, or many of them are diminutive, reduced to size of few cents of land, or maybe maximum few acres, like that. And then there will be savanna lands, a combination of standard trees and grasses, useful for wildlife, cattle grazing, fuel wood, collection of various NTFP, like that. And then the supply forest, which can be cut for timber, firewood, leaf manure, they are utility forests. So today, these utility forests are minor forests. Many of those are given for exercise of privileges of the local village communities in Uttara Kannada. They are called minor forests. And then the important watershed forests, most of them came in the sacred groves. And see, landscape was a mosaic of sacred groves, agricultural areas, grasslands, like that, and utility forests, like that. And see, this kind of landscape sustained very rich wildlife. In Uttara Kannada, for example, elephants were many, tigers were in large numbers, panthers, lion-tailed macaque, so many types of animals. They had a heterogeneous kind of landscape. So even a tiger requires 70 to 100 square kilometer of land, not all dense forest, but much of savanna lands, grasslands. Then only it will get the grazing animal prey. So like that, there was a system. And today, most of these open areas were planted with acacia, teak, and this created a lot of disturbance in wildlife habitats, shrinkage of wildlife habitat, not only in Uttara Kannada, all over Karnataka and Kodagu district, particularly BR Hills and all those areas, Chamarajanagar, you find the human-animal conflicts are steadily on the increase because there are hardly any grassland. There are weed-infested plantations, then a lot of teak and other monocultures, acacia, etc., which hardly produce any food for wild animal. So day by day, the elephant attack, tiger attack on humans, and damages to croplands have become too rampant in many of the areas. So this is a thinking point for us, whether to have a landscape management strategy rather than a forest management plan. We need more of a landscape management plan where animals, plants, humans are all interlinked in reciprocating in a very, what you say, in a symbiotic way. Now, when you look at many of these satellite imageries of Western Ghat districts in the Malnadu areas, you find strange things that there are dark green patches and light patches. So these are present day satellite imageries. Now, when you go to a dark green patch like this or this, like that, and you know, they are called by the people Khan forest. What are these Khan forests? These Khan forests in the pre-colonial times were sacred forests, and they may be from few hectares to few hundred hectares in area, and even exceeding even 1,000 hectare also. In 1868, Brandis, the Inspector General of Forests, studied Swarab Taluk itself, and he documented several forests called Khan forests. And also, nearby Khans, there were other forests which catch fire. You can see these drier areas where grass and other trees and human habitations and all that. So when fires enter, which was common when Brandis surveyed also, he found fires were sweeping through the dry forest. But when the fires reach the Khans, the fires will stop immediately because the evergreen forest full of water bodies inside and nearby, very high humidity, that won't be burning. So like that. So no fires enter the evergreen forest. Leaves, branches, and fallen trees accumulate gradually decay, forming a rich surface layer of vegetable mold. But he did not understand that these Khan forests were also the abodes of the local spirits or the local deities of the forest, which were the gods of the local village communities. And so many tribal communities all over the Western Ghats, they did not have ownership of the lands, but they were shifting cultivators. They cleared small areas, burnt annually, and then grew some millets and vegetables and tubers. And then when the land fertility declined, they went to nearby forest, again slashed and burned. Like that, this was part of a land use system of the pre-colonial forest dwellers, not in the villages, but in the forest areas. And so many tribal people in the Western Ghats, Gaulis, Anbars, Alakivokals, Kunbis, Mudugars, Muduvans, Panias, Kurubas, etc. So, but later, by the end of 19th century and in early 20th century, the slash and burn cultivation, shifting cultivation was prohibited by the British, and the lands got all merged with the forest department lands. Now, but one time, some 20 years ago, Professor Madhav Gadgil and myself and our team surveyed 25 square kilometer of area in the Siddhapur plains of Uttara Kannada. It's an undulating landscape, and we demarcated the area and started mapping what all kinds of landscape elements were there. See, ask the people, where are your sacred groves? They showed the sacred groves, which may be very tiny, 1 hectare or 2 hectare or few, or may not be existing today, but the name may be there. What was the name? The names were Khan or Bana. Khan or Bana was a sacred grove, and even today we'll be having deity under the tree or maybe in a small shrine or in a small temple with 1 or 2 trees left. So the sacred groves, by their clan or tribal or the racial memory, when we made the map, it was nearly 6% of the total land was under these Khans and Banas. 24% was under, under supply forest. Shifting cultivation was something like 23%, that is a hakkal, they call it. Bana grazing land is 6% plus. Then Gadde, Bailu and our fields. And then water bodies, Keri, hamlets, and miscellaneous uses. This was the traditional. So when nearly 6% was under sacred groves, in the present condition, that was some 20 years back when we surveyed, 1989, much more than that, the sacred groves covered hardly 2% areas. So recently our team, the research scholars, Tulika, and also this our Paras, and our team local, we surveyed Halkar forest, very close to the Kumta town. And here, the traditional land use system still remains. See, the dark green forest here, in 3-4 patches, big patches of forest, as a part of a village close to Kumta municipality, something like 220 acres of forest. So where all the coastal areas, bulk of the forest vanished, the Halkar community protected their traditional forest. They have their sacred groves, their no shifting cultivation today, their permanent agricultural area, their residential areas. In the residential areas, as they tell, the water in the wells never dries up. So we have started an exercise measuring every month water in about 25 wells, water level, and seeing what is the water level fluctuation. But compared to the Hegade village, away from this forest, this village, Halkar village, where water level has already gone to rock bottom even today, but not in the Halkar village. So one of the blessings of forest preservation is not just biodiversity, but also water conservation. So these are our scenes from Halkar forest study, and we studied CS, our energy wetland research team under Dr. Ramachandra's guidance, studied about the Khan lands of Shimoga, and as per a forest department document in 1965, the Malnadu taluks of Shimoga, Hosnagara, Shiralkopa, Sagar, Soraba together have 156 Khans. And today, the area handed over to forest department is something like 21,777 hectare of Khan forest. And other notified forests are 7,619, which were not handed over. So if you total them, nearly 30,000 hectares of sacred groves or the remains are there. They are called Khan forests in these taluks. Obviously, the groves were more and their area was more when in Sorab Taluk in 1868, Brandis survey reveals 13,000 hectares of Khan forest. But today, only around 8,000 hectares are there, and some are notified areas, but not yet merged. So, the sacred forests are relics of tropical rainforests. They are storehouses of carbon, enormous quantity of carbon. Now, when we see the Khan forest, like Katale Khan, this is Katale Khan. You see, Mr. Vishnu, the late Vishnu was our celebrated field assistant standing near a Syzygium gardneri tree. The tree is several tons biomass, and half that biomass is carbon. So you see how the sacred groves protected very threatened biodiversity elements. These are Syzygium travanguricum, critically endangered. In between is this one is Myristica fatua. It is a Amazon forest relic originated in the Amazon area 150 million years back. But still, we have those migrants from Amazon which came through continental rift into Western Ghats and India. They are still there in the sacred groves. So several elements which have high degree of endemism. You see, the endemic Western Ghat palms called Pinanga dixoni looks like our sugarcane, and we have grown few plants successfully in our field station where I'm sitting now, and also some in my residence. And here you see in Sorab town, this is a Sorab town, and this is a Khan nearby with all degraded area today. It is 1,000 plus acres. And see, the people live where streams flow from the Khans, where water bodies are there. Here they make dams, check dams. Here check dam, like that. Here check dam. So all around there are check dams, water bodies, like that. So like that there were so many Khans, and agriculture, the gardens, all were around. So the human communities congregated around the Khan forest. The Khan forest, not just for water and biomass, it was also for NTFP. Lot of precious biodiversity, like pepper. Pepper could be collected without cutting tree. Wild pepper was once collected in huge quantities from the Khans of Uttara Kannada, from the sacred groves of Uttara Kannada, from the Shimoga district, like that. Francis Buchanan called these Khan forests as Menasu Khan, because pepper was growing plentifully, and that pepper since 2000 years was being exported to European countries, to China, to different countries. Even the Caesars of Rome fought for getting dominance over our Indian West Coast, Western Ghat area, just for the sake of pepper, black pepper and spices. So today, because the Khans are perishing and Khans are full of canopy holes, the land is baking with heat, and the peppers, the black pepper has nearly vanished. The myristicas, the wild nutmegs hardly grow. The cinnamon trees are vanishing. Many of the Khans have become coffee plantations, and many have become arecanut gardens, and very little of the original forest is preserved, just so that the occupants should not get the curse of the gods. So for that sake, namesake, something is preserved. So this culture has to change. We should have the worship of the Aranyani, the forest deities, the deities of the earth, the deities of the atmosphere, the deities of the sky in full spirit. Then only we can conserve our environment. You know, these Khans have still, occasionally you can see Syzygium, Travanguricum. These are the forgotten dams of the early people. Now the Khans have dried up, bamboos have come, bamboos catch fire, the water body dries up early, so water scarcity, or there may be little pools of water in the summer months, like that. This is a very pathetic situation. So how best we can change this? We also studied this one Khan in detail called Katale Khan, Karikan. So there is a deity here called Karikan, mother of the sacred grove, Karikan Amma. And the deity is now uh, Pradishta done in the temple, but the grove is protected. You know, this looks like a Malaysian rainforest, a Brunei rainforest. Enter this, you find it is dominated by Dipterocarpus trees, a site which can rarely see in central Western Ghat. You may have to go to Katalekan, another Khan like this, to see such sacred groves. And so we wanted to study how much water is conserved by this forest. And under the, under the leadership of Dr. Rajashri Ray, 2 areas were demarcated, one in the Karikan sacred grove and one in a village, another village away from the sacred grove were ordinary forest. And below, the wells were, water bodies were measured for wells, whereas where there is very less water in the summer months in the wells below the ordinary forest, where people were struggling for drinking water and water for irrigation purpose. In the wells below the sacred grove, the water was within 2-3 meters, even in the summer months, and 99% of the farmers in this village below with the blessings of the Karikan mother goddess, they cultivate 99% of the cultivation is under garden crops, which fetch them much more money. They are full of spice crops and arecanut. Water level, moisture level is very high in the soil in the sacred grove compared to the other forests. So this we studied elsewhere also, this kind of phenomenon, and found out without any doubt that where good sizable forests are preserved in the traditional way in honor of the deities may be local names, Bodappa, Chaudamma, Jadkappa, Ulidevaru, like that. Today their habitats are all shrinking, and the deities have even vanished from such forest areas. But this is a call that we need to demarcate those sacred forests, protect them. They are fireproof areas, they are biodiversity rich areas, and in those areas lies the future of regeneration of the secondary forests. Today, coming to the conclusion, I may say that you see, this map depicts the biodiversity hotspots of the world. The biodiversity hotspots, 36 of them are mapped in India. We have the Himalaya and the Indo-Burma Himalayan region. That is, Indo-Burma region is a biodiversity hotspot. Western Ghats, Sri Lanka is a biodiversity hotspot. Madagascar is one. Now, if you look at all these, most of them are tropical and subtropical mountains. Even California, little in the northern latitude, where the forests are burning, where the abode of hundreds of tribal communities once, and today the flourishing, the European colonies, Indian migrants, all kinds of people are living there, and vast areas, lakhs of acres are converted into national parks without any human being, so that the dry wood piles up in the summer months, in the dry months, sometimes catch fire, not one fire. When fire comes, these forest fires, the embers fly in the sky, hundreds of meters, fall in the dry woods elsewhere, and one fire become multiple fires and uncontrollable fires, and people have to run away from these areas. And today, when these exceptionally rich biodiversity areas dispersed in different parts of the tropics and subtropics, and if the fire history is checked, yeah, we find, yeah, okay. Before that, you see, these fireproof forests, they are the Khans, whether in Western Ghats or in Goa, and these Khans have, see, high degree of endemism. If Khans are very evergreen, so if a forest becomes more and more evergreen, see, more and more evergreen, then you find more and more endemic trees in them. The percentage of endemic trees keep on increasing if a forest becomes more evergreen. And you look at the carbon storage, low evergreen forest, much impacted by humans, 10%, 20%, 30%, 50%. You find the carbon stock is less, just 200, 250 within that. Most of the low evergreen forests in the Western Ghats. But when a forest is more evergreen, the carbon stored is high. See, up to 400 tons per hectare. So in the same forest stretch where rainfall is same, 300 plus, 3000 plus millimeter, we find with that, we find very poor biomass forests and very rich biomass forests. What makes the difference? It is the management. So this is an eye-opener how we need to have a holistic management plan for Western Ghat forests, a landscape element based a system where the landscape elements are harmoniously blended. Not that one element should be given all the priority because they are all woods. No, there should be grasslands, there should be swamps, there should be lakes, streams, all together should be the landscape. Today, what is happening? You find most of the 37 biodiversity hotspots are having fire, devastating fires. They belong to Europe, Andes mountains, no, Brazil, the South American, yeah, Andes is Central American, then South American, Panama, all this. Central America, Mexico, everywhere you find summer comes, the forest starts burning. And Africa, comparatively less. But where you find the European colonization and large national parks created, like say Horn of Africa, all that, no. The Europeans created very large national parks of thousands of square kilometers. When human beings are not part, the fires become uncontrollable. But when you come to Western Ghats, you don't find that kind of fire. Western Ghats, Sri Lanka hotspot. Indo-Burma region, in the Himalayas, we don't find that kind of fire. Because here, these forests have people living there. Though fires are there, but people are still much part of the valleys in Western Ghats, in the slopes and valleys of the Himalayas, and where they keep their sacred groves. The rivers are sacred, the catchment areas are sacred, like that. So there is some kind of a cultural background also, which highlight that the fact that while declaring conservation reserves, people should be taken as a part, people should be taken as a part in discussions also. So thank you. I think I have taken a little long time or okay. Thank you so much. And you are most welcome to uh, any doubt, clear any doubt or any questions, please.
Thank you, sir. If anyone has questions, they can ask it in the chat box, as well as they can switch on their mic and they can speak also.
People can receive. Yeah, I have my problem. Yeah. Got it. Subash.
Participants, you can post your questions in the chat box, as well as you can turn on your mic and you can ask the question.
So, summarizing the talk of that insightful talk by MDS sir. So he has talked upon the restoring lost homes of the spirit of the forest. So he has mentioned about that mentioning of Aranyani in Rig Veda, which denotes the spirit and the gods related to the to conservation of these or protection of these forests in supernatural being. So he has talked about the Greek means that the Greek gods which are associated with this pristine forest. So people believes and because of their belief or because of their fear, they worshipped this patch of forest, and they conserve the forest. They maintain that ecosystem. And in during he also talked about that means the tribal peoples in Australia, they conserve this forest for 60 to 65 per years. So which basically they were doing the agriculture practices. So and he also talked about that the forest fire which took up in early 2000 century, around the 2006. So the devastating effect of those because of that burning fire. So earlier people used to manage the forest fire on a periodic basis and on a systematic manner. So they used to put fire on a specific plot, and based on a specific plot, so to reduce the litter load or that forest load what is accumulating in the understory. So after that he has talked about the local god or um, the sacred deity which possess in the people who are residing over there, who are native to those regions. So they possess those, like he has mentioned about Devam and Theam. So like that, this was in southern India, and similarly to that, this management, forest management by the local peoples or the tribal was famous in other throughout the globe, in US, in US like California. So people are managing the forest, but after that invasion of means after the Europeans took over, so they demarcated, they made people to evacuate from this forest, large forest patch, and they demarcated these forests as protected forest in the name of this natural forest or wildlife sanctuary. So this is kind of a disservice of the forest ecosystem in the form of this forest fire. So due to the demarcation of forest in as conserved forest, so he has also talked about about the agroforestry, the concept which has popularized in the 1970s, which was coined by John Bain. So about the agroforestry, how it is important to conserve this forest, and how this agroforestry provide different ecosystem services to the people, to the livelihood, to sustain the livelihood of the people in the form of carbon sequestration and edible fruits, and water conservation, population services. These are the services provided by these forests. And in 1850, around in 1858, that Francis Bockham, who has surveyed the North Canada Circle, so he found that during his survey he found that there are a lot of means rich in biodiversity. These forests are rich in biodiversity, high endemism. So they have demarcated, or they name this sacred patch of forest as Kardus, or they were Kardus or Kans. So sir has also highlighted this their studies in Matigar or Siddhapur village, where they have where they were they identified endangered species like Veteria indica, Cesium travanscoricum, and these are endemic to Travanscoricum region. But they in their study they found it in this rich sacred forest. So because of their intervention in that 1 hectare of that sacred forest, the people restore, means conserve that forest, and in the name of sacred groups. So like that.
Excuse me, Paras. Uh,
Yes, sir.
yeah, I think one or two questions are there. Afterwards, you can continue. No,
Okay, sure, sir. Sure, sir.
yes, or some may like to leave. So here is a question from Gagan.
Huh.
Hello, Gagan. Yeah, can you
Huh,
read?
I will read out the question, sir.
Yeah, please
So,
read out the question.
so
Yeah.
he, Gagan Kinni. So, hello, sir. Nice presentation. I had a doubt regarding the forest fire when they are used to burn the forest of various region. Why there was no attack of invasive plant onto those into those regions?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question which requires an explanation. Those indigenous people or the early inhabitants, for agricultural purpose, hunting purpose, they burned. Then if a forest fires are violent, hunting people were nomadic. They live from place to place. But agricultural people, they would be doing mostly shifting cultivation. So they burn some patch, cultivate for a few years, and then shift to next area. So the landscape will be a mosaic in different stages of succession. So the weeds will be in some stage, but when the natural vegetation return and the canopy shade increases, the weeds automatically disappear. Weeds like Eupatorium, Landana, such weeds in other countries also vanish if the land is given too long rest. Forest trees return. So I think this answers your question. Thank you. Yeah, next. Anybody else?
The next question is from Dr. Yogita KS. Primary forest we have only in this place specifically, or other places also?
In fact, primary forest is present all over the Western Ghats, but they are to be identified because they have merged with all secondary forests in early stage of succession, secondary forests in late stage of succession, where they look like primary forest, but some elements may be missing. So even the sacred groves of early people might have lost their identity as sacred groves. They merged with the rest of the forest when the forest department took over the management of forest. Even sacred groves also would have lost the identity, many of them, and merged with the forest in different stages of succession. But if we carefully study those forests, and if we see patches of Dipterocarpus, patches of some species like Vateria, like that. No, there are certain species which come up only in the primary forest. Myristicas, especially Myristica fatua, Gymnacrandira, Canarica. These species are indications that these would have been primary forests. So they may be anywhere in the South Indian and central Western Ghats. So then we have to see whether these forests have any deciduous species, large tree. Suppose a forest with Syzygium and Myristica, if there is a terminalia tree, which is a deciduous tree, a large tree, or a Lagostromia, what we call Nandi tree, which would have come when there was forest fire, canopy was open, but today no fire, and the tiny seeds of these species have not enough store of food to produce tall saplings to get enough light. So under the dark canopy of the succession of evergreens, these gets lost and gradually these weeds and other open area trees keep vanishing. So, but primary forests are there elsewhere too. They are to be carefully surveyed, identified, demarcated, and specially preserved as primary forest and which will help in habitat heterogeneity for animals and also in recovery of forests. Okay, thank you.
So the next question is from Gagan HM. How much of weed species has taken over in Halkar forest region, and if any, are there any step taken to curb that?
Yeah, in Halkar forest is one where almost nearly 150 to 200 families, members keep entering the forest to collect leaf litter, to break dry branches with hand for firewood purpose, leaf litter for their gardens, their rice fields, etc. as a manure. So, and then trees keep falling also. So when there are small openings, in those openings weeds appear. So when ground litter is collected, fallen leaves, much of fallen leaf is collected, the soil is exposed. When the soil is exposed and when wherever there is a canopy light peeping through, that these openings favor the weeds. So the weeds keep coming in colonies along with the native species. But one thing we notice, there is high degree of litter collection from the forest. If this litter collection is reduced and confined to small compartments in the forest, every year they can change the compartments, and then there is chance by this type of management locally to be followed by the village community, opening some part of forest for resource collection and closing for some years after when these areas get exhausted. for the forest to regenerate properly. By this management strategy, you can come to a certain kind of a steady state. Weeds can be controlled as well. Thank you.
So another question from Baswaraju sir. So sir, is there any effect of lantana in the dense forest?
Not in Halkar or not in the coastal taluks, Lantana is not there. Lantana comes in the dry forests of Western Ghats, in the rain shadow regions, where rainfall is something less than 150 centimeter. Lantana tend to colonize, and in the dry deciduous forest, much more, which you can see in Mudumalai forest, in Bandipur forest, like that. No, in parts of BR Hills, you find lantana growing, and they are in drier parts. So lantana control, physical control is too tough. So fire can burn, but fire will burn also much of biodiversity. Fire will be hazardous for a lot of lizards and snakes and other small mammals like that, and so many insects perish in fire. So what is needed is uh, keeping forest in compartments with fire corridors, where fire-free corridors, and also favor regeneration of local species, favor regeneration, and see that around those local saplings, the weeds are not engulfing them. The weeds are to be controlled specifically to free the local saplings and to promote. It will take, it's a very painstaking affair. It will take some years. But lantana is more where teak plantations, eucalyptus plantation, acacia, such monocultures are more. Many of our forest, this thing, protected areas have teak plantations. So that is too bad. So these teak plantations, gradually vegetation has to be changed. Bring fire tolerant species only, which will produce fleshy fruits, and which invite more animals, more birds, like that. So there should be a plan involving foresters, biologists, all that, and see how patches can be restored to natural forest and to minimize the fire. Thank you.
So it seems no more questions. If anybody want to ask some question, they can unmute themselves and they can ask. If there is no more question, I thank Dr. MDS sir for their insightful session for all of us. We learn a lot about the forest, how it works and the functioning, and there are various threats to this pristine forest ecosystem, and specifically to the sacred forest or sacred groups which people have conserved for from a very long period, way back from years, hundred of years. And one good example of community managed forest is Halkar forest. So sir has given insights on that. So with this, I will request TVR sir to conclude today's session.
Thank you, Professor Subash, for an interesting talk on the occasion of the International Day of Forest. I am sure many youngsters who have taken part in the webinar are benefited by your vast experience and knowledge of the Western Ghats. And a very interesting talk. Today you even brought in the Rig Veda and some of the ideas from the Rig Veda, how the forest was made. And it is always intellectually rewarding to hear your lecture and converse with you. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with all of us.
Thank you. It was a great opportunity. Thanks to all the participants.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir, once again.
Thank you.
And with that, we come to an end of our insightful webinar. Thank you, sir, for sharing your expertise and passion with us today. And thank you to all the participants for joining us today and for your active engagement in the session. We encourage you to keep an eye on the IISc EIACP website for announcement about further webinars in live series. Our next webinar is tomorrow. And you can also visit our YouTube channel and this IISc for more informative talks on environmental topics. Thank you once again for being a part of this event.